Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of The Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 9th of April. So coming to the first article, open up the Supreme Court, a very important article. I have told you this is the most important topic that I can till now conclude for the General Studies paper 2 for the mains this year. The context is with regards to the transparency in the Judiciary of India and especially in the context of implementation of RTI to the Judiciary. This is an important topic. Now coming to the issues which have been discussed. The first issue is with regards to the Delhi High Court judgment on RTI. Now you should know that this was a judgment that was given in the year 2009, and in this particular judgment the Chief Justice of the High Court had given a judgment that the Chief Justice of India is a public authority and therefore he is very much under the ambit of the RTI. The justice who had given this particular judgment was Justice Ravindra Bhatt. So this is some background to the present controversy. Now for a long time after this particular judgment, what happened is that this judgment was, as soon as this judgment was given, the Supreme Court stayed this judgment, and after that an appeal to this judgment was for a long time lying in the Supreme Court. Until now, when this appeal is what has now been heard by a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court and a decision is what is due, and as a result of this, number of articles are what are being published on this particular topic. So this is also what is important from the context perspective of this particular editorial. Next, what is important is that under this particular analysis or under this particular examination by the Supreme Court, 3 questions are what are being determined. The first is that is Chief Justice a public authority? The second question is with regards to the assets of the judges, and are the assets under the RTI? And the third question is with regards to the correspondence of the collegium, and is this correspondence of the collegium something that is subject to RTI? So these are the questions that are being raised. Individually, I shall be discussing each and every single question. So coming to the first question, that is the Chief Justice of India a public authority under RTI? Now here the editorial is discussing that all power, including judicial power, is what is required to be accountable in the modern era, or for that matter under the modern constitution as well as democratic principles of India. All power is what needs to be accountable. There needs to be transparency in all the systems, and judiciary is something that cannot be exclusive to this particular principle. And another issue that has been discussed here is that justice has to be an open justice. So definitely if these principles are what are implemented, then the Chief Justice is a public authority, and very much the judgment of the Delhi High Court is what should be upheld, and Chief Justice should be brought under the ambit of the RTI. So that is the first analysis. The next issue is with regards to the assets of the judges. This we had discussed previously also. Now here the judges are objecting that if their assets are what are brought about in the public domain, that their privacy is something that is going to be intruded, it is going to be hindered. So the issue that has been analyzed in this particular editorial is that the issue of privacy is something that is already safeguarded in the RTI. If you remember in the previous discussion, we had discussed that it is section 8(1)(j) of the RTI which already lays down safeguards for the privacy of individuals, and it is said that only in cases where the privacy is not more important than public interest will such kind of diversion be allowed, otherwise it is going to be restricted. So definitely if the safeguard is there, then why are the judges worrying so much? Also, when they have implemented similar rules of revelation of assets for politicians, then why are they not allowing for same benchmark to be used on their own divulsion of their own assets? So that is something that is important, that has been analyzed here. Next, what is important is with regards to the correspondence of the collegium. Now it is particularly this topic which is the most controversial. In the above two, it is pretty much clear that they should be brought under the RTI. There is no particular reason because of which they should not be brought under the ambit of the RTI. But what is important here is that in the correspondence of the collegium, there are some issues that are emerging. Now the issue here is that often in the collegium, first and foremost, you should have some clarity about the collegium. The collegium, you should know, it comprises of 5 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, and in the case of the High Court, it is what comprises of 3 senior most judges in the High Court, and these are the judges who will decide upon the promotions as well as appointment of judges. So now what has happened here is that any correspondence that is being shared in the collegium is what is being discussed, that should this correspondence between the judges on to whether a judge should be selected or not selected be brought in the public domain. Now, from the context of transparency, it is being advocated that definitely the public has the right to know that on what basis is a particular judge selected, so it should be brought to the public domain. Also, the concept of the 2015 judgment on the NJC, that is the National Judicial Appointments Commission, where the NJC law was what was struck down by the court, is something that has been discussed in the editorial. The editorial here is saying that just because the judiciary is demanding for judicial independence, it does not mean that they should also demand for judicial primacy. So this is one important analysis, that judicial independence is something that is different from judicial primacy. So that is the first argument. Another thing that has been given here is, another argument that has been given is that often the appointment of judges is what is happening under a lot of opacity. A case is what has been given of Justice Markandeya Katju, where he had self-admitted that in one particular case where he was a member of the collegium, he was to appoint a lawyer as a judge of the High Court. So he simply did not appoint that particular lawyer because the lawyer was in a live-in relation and was not married. So this is no ground for not appointing a lawyer as a judge, is what is being argued in the editorial. So these kind of reasons that the judges often take in collegiums are arbitrary, and as a result of which it is very, very important that transparency is what is brought about. So that is another argument that has been given. Another issue which has been discussed here is with regards to global examples. Now you should know that globally, whether it is the US, it is the UK, it is South Africa, Kenya, these are some examples which have been given. In all these countries, there is no such case where collegium is deciding, or for that matter, such opacity is what is involved in the appointment of judges. Rather, it is the public, it is an open public platform where the opinions of the appointees is what is openly brought in the public domain, and based upon that, a selection is what is made. So that is one thing that has been analyzed here. But the issue that goes against bringing correspondence of collegium in the public domain is that if this correspondence is brought in the public domain, then there might be some opinions that judges are giving against a particular lawyer for him not being eligible to be appointed as a judge. So if this information is also brought in the public domain, then this might negatively hamper the career of that particular lawyer, is what is being analyzed in this particular issue or in this editorial. So this is one issue which is a controversial one. So these are some important analysis that you should have in mind with this particular issue. Another thing which has been discussed here is the concept of open to sunlight. Now basically this is a metaphorical concept, but I liked this metaphor, and this is one metaphor that you can use also in your answers. It gives a good impression. Now here the editorial is discussing that sunlight is basically the best disinfectant. So this is one metaphor that reflects that anything that is open is going to function better. It is going to be more infected from the maladies of corruption and such kind of issues, or what are not going to emerge in such institutes. Also, it is very much important for ensuring that judiciary is impartial, it is independent, and the legitimacy of judiciary is what is going to be derived from the trust of the people. And it is for this trust of the people that judiciary has to make itself open to people and transparent to people. So this is what is the entire analysis. As I've mentioned, one of the most important topics for general studies. So please make a note of this. Coming to the next article, playing politics over Golan Heights. Now I had discussed a similar article previously also. The context here is that it is with regards to US recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and this is something that is impacting the international order. Also, what you should know is that Israel had occupied the Golan Heights in the year 1967. This was after the Israel-Arab conflict that Israel occupied the Golan Heights. Rest, if you want to go into the history of this particular issue, then please refer to our previous article which I had discussed on this, because there I have delved into this matter in more detail. So coming to the issues which are important and which are new to this particular article, the first issue is with regards to the pro-Israel steps. Now the editorial is discussing that US has been adopting a pro-Israel strategy for long since Trump's coming to power in US, Donald Trump becoming the president of US. Some pro-Israel steps have been taken. The first is with regards to the Iran treaty. This treaty was something that was brokered by the previous regime in US, that is Obama administration. So from this Iran treaty, they have walked back. US has withdrawn from this particular treaty. Another thing is that US has recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So that was again a pro-Israel step. They shifted their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And now the third pro-Israel step is the recognition of sovereignty of Israel over Golan Heights. Golan Heights is what Israel had captured from Syria, so that is something that you should know. Another thing that has been discussed here is with regards to some UNSC resolutions. Now here the editorial is giving us some facts. It is telling us that resolution, that is resolution 242, which was signed in the year 1967 itself, then another resolution 338, which came into existence in the year 1973, and another recent resolution, which is the 497 resolution, which came into existence in the year 1981. All these three resolutions by the United Nations Security Council rejected Israel's claims over Golan Heights. So US has gone against these three particular resolutions by the UNSC, and that is what is a cause of concern here. Next, the editorial is discussing about US and Israel's domestic politics, which is an important analysis. Now, why is the US president doing such kind of steps is what has been analyzed. This is to increase his voting base in US. There is a huge lobby that is pro-Israel in US, and it is to largely cater to them that the US president is taking such kind of decisions. Also, it is to assuage right-wing opinions in US, which we have read, which we are continuously discussing, that there is a tendency of rise of right-wing extremism in Western countries. So it is in light with that US is adhering to such policies. Next, vis-a-vis Israel's domestic politics, what is important is that elections are what are due in Israel. So Israel's president is calling this kind of a gesture by US as an achievement of his tenure. So that is why both the leaders in US as well as in Israel are benefiting domestically from this move. So that is one analysis which has been given. Another important analysis is with regards to the global response. Now here the editorial is discussing that the global response is largely neutral. Only Russia has objected to it, Iran has objected to it, Syria has objected to it, but largely there has been global silence. And what is very, very important is that there has been a silence in the Arab world, which is clearly showing that there is a change in dynamics in West Asia. This is primarily because you should know that in the past, the entire Arab world was largely against Israel. But this is clearly showing that the dynamics is what has changed, and now West Asian politics is what is more pro-US as well as pro-Israel. So that is one important conclusion which can be drawn from this silence of the Arab world. Now coming next to the most important part of this discussion, which is India's interest. What is the impact of this on India's interest? Now first and foremost, you should know that India now is largely seen as pro-Israel as well as pro-US, because India-US as well as India-Israel relations are what are improving. Another thing that is important is that Indian forces were part of the UN peacekeeping forces in Golan Heights. So that is one important analysis which has been given, that how this kind of a movement is what could impact India. Next, what is important is that this change in geopolitics in West Asia is something that will also impact India. So that is something that is related to the Indian interest. Another thing which is very, very important here is the idea of unilateralism versus rule-based international order. Here you should know that India has always stood by rule-based international order. India has always laid its faith in the United Nations. So if UN is what is going to get eroded, then this is not in the interest of India. Unilateralism, especially by a superpower like US, is something that is not in the interest of India. So that is how Indian interests are what are related to this particular development, and that is what the entire article is relevant for us. This will be important for general studies paper 2, and international relations are what are relevant for us. So coming to the next article, India-Maldives relations. Now basically the context here is the India-Maldives bilateral relations. This is an interview of the foreign minister of Maldives. So some important points vis-a-vis India-Maldives relations are what we can extract from this particular interview. So coming to the issue, the first issue is with regards to a new government in Maldives. You should know that elections were what were held in Maldives in the year 2018 in the month of September, and after that President Ibrahim Mohammed Solih who is now in power in Maldives. So this is a reform, this is a change that has taken place in Maldives, and it is after this government change that a revamping of India-Maldives relation is something that is being done. Under the former President Abdullah Yamin's rule, India-Maldives relations had gone a spiral down. So that is something that is a new development vis-a-vis India-Maldives relation. Next, what is important here, which has been discussed, are the multiple exchanges between India as well as Maldives. You should know that India's Prime Minister Modi, had attended President Soli's swearing-in ceremony. Also after that, External Affairs Minister from India has visited Maldives. The Minister from Maldives have visited India. Also President Soli himself visited India within 1 month of his coming into power. So there have been multiple high-level exchanges between the two countries, which is showing a reform in relations. Next, what is important here is with regards to the development assistance. Now, you should know that India has been giving a large amount of development assistance to Maldives. This is largely being used for people-oriented projects and other bigger projects in Maldives. So this is again a thaw in the relations between India and Maldives, and it is an improvement in the relations. Next is the issue of China. The previous regime was very much pro-China, but here the newer regime is trying to maintain a balance between India as well as China, and the foreign minister in his interview is saying that that Maldives does not believe in playing India-China card against each other, as it is not in the larger interest of all the three countries. Next is the issue of people-to-people contacts. Now, whenever you have an opportunity of discussing India-South Asia relations, and any country in South Asia or India's neighborhood, and India-China factor, you have to bring out this point that people-to-people contacts are something that India has a supremacy over China. Despite the fact that China is investing much more than India in these countries, the people-to-people contacts with China are minimal as compared to India. So this is one important analysis, and this is one soft diplomacy that India can use. So that is something that is important. It is a part of the soft power of India. Now, India helped, some analysis is what has been given, some facts is what has been given here, that India helped Maldives in the year 1988 when the mercenaries attacked Maldives. Also in the year 2004 when there was a tsunami in Maldives, India was amongst the first to respond to Maldives. Also recently during the Malay water crisis, also India provided or catered help to Maldives. So the people-to-people contacts are what are very high. There are a large number of people from Maldives who are settled in India. A large number of Indian diaspora is settled in Maldives. There is huge amount of tourism between India and Maldives. So this is something that should work in the favor of India-Maldives bilateral relation. Next, what is very, very important is with regards to the geopolitical location of Maldives. Now, the 8-degree channel which is passing through Maldives is one of the major maritime lanes of the world, and it is in the interest of Maldives, India, as well as the entire world, that peace and open and freedom of movement in these particular lanes is what is maintained. So it is in this regard that Maldives and India should cooperate towards the peace of Indian Ocean. So that is something that has been analyzed. Next, what has been discussed in the interview here is the concept of some hate mongers. This is what is happening in Maldives, is that there are one section of society in Maldives who are largely spreading hate against India. They are accusing India for gifting helicopters to Maldives, which might impact Maldives military. That is one accusation. Also, another accusation is with regards to Indian military personnel being posted in Maldives. So this is something that is a false accusation. No Indian military personnel is posted in Maldives, is what has been analyzed in this particular editorial. So these are some analysis that is important vis-a-vis India-Maldives relation. All of India's neighbors, all the countries in the Indian Ocean are important for us. A question on any of these countries is what you can expect in UPSC mains. So that is going to be the relevance of this particular article. And that's all for our discussion today. Before we end, please take a look at our batches. We are starting with an IAS regular batch from the 15th of April, and also we are starting with an IAS prelims revision batch from the 20th of April. So all those of you who are interested, please do get in touch with us. And that's all for today's discussion. I thank you all for watching the video.